Hello, everyone. My name is Marion with DTM Real Talk Channel. It's the channel that you can tune into, have the ability to listen to the thoughts of others about topics all over the world that touch every one of our lives. Everybody goes through basically the same thing. There is nothing new under the sun. So if you're going through, someone else has already been there. Maybe you can find hope. Maybe it's a pathway that can set you on the right road just by tuning in. So DTM Real Talk, just keeping it real. And if you like it, like us at the bottom, subscribe, and let us know just how we helped you. Just keeping it real. Nothing but love. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tracking along with us these past 4 series of relationships. My goodness, it's been amazing. It's been a wonderful ride, very insightful. It's been very helpful. Thank you so much for the responses. We've talked about unifying our value system, understanding it, and the devastating effects that trauma can cause in relationships. Now, the questions that are consistently coming in, I thank you guys so much. Hopefully, we'll be able to answer them all. One of the key points made in the last video with Dr. Butler was how a woman and a man has to learn, a woman or a man has to learn to trust all over again after being traumatized. That was a key point there. And I think I really do believe that you guys were blessed by that explanation because of the emails that I've received, that if an individual doesn't deal with that, they begin to digress, they become aggressive in their behavior, issues with authority, instruction and submission. Healing has to take place, guys. But of course, it can't and it won't unless a person sees that they have been wounded. So go back and listen to those series and see how you can be enlightened, how it can help you, or how you can know if you're on the right track. So tonight, let's dive in attentively and listen to Pastor Daniels as he shares with us some insight regarding how men and women think differently. Here you go. Good morning, good evening, good night. This is DTM Real Talk, and we're just keeping it real tonight. And I do have a special guest. All of my guests are special. But if this is your first time chiming in, please like and share and subscribe. And thank you so much for your support. I appreciate you. And we are continuing with relationships. On last week, you guys heard Dr. Butler. Go back and review it. And the week before, go back and review it. This is absolutely incredible because we got a lot of questions coming in about relationships. How do we handle them? How do we handle conflict? What happens when you bring your past into the present relationship? All kinds of questions. So we're excited about all that. And a lot of people don't know that what happens in your relationships usually stem from when you were a child. But anyway, this morning, we have a very special guest. And you guys have seen him before with he and his wife, Kristen. They were sharing their experiences, but today he's going to give us some insight to help us out. Okay. Pastor Marc, who is the pastor of First Baptist Church of Avondale since 2001. He's also a professor of biology at William Carey University since 2003. So we're going to get a lot of insight today. And most of all, he's my dear friend, and he loves Jesus so, so much. Say hi to the good folks out there, Pastor.
Hi. Hi, Marion. Good to see you again, and good to be here with you guys. Hopefully, I can help a little bit, maybe.
Yes, of course. Now, we've been talking about relationships. Not sure if you got a chance to look at it at all, but just how would you define relationship before we get started on some of the questions? How would you define what is a relationship?
Hey. What is a relationship? I guess there's all different ways to define a relationship. You could have a relationship between parent and child, obviously, relationship between friends, and relationship between boyfriend and girlfriend, or between husband and wife, relationship between coworkers. So it really depends on the relationship to how you're going to define it. But I would say a relationship at the very basic level would be two people who their lives are entwined, and they are working towards a common goal of that relationship, of growing closer together and understanding each other.
Well, okay, thank you. And you know what? You on the last clip, well, actually, that was a year ago.
Uh-huh.
You were talking about how men and women think differently,
Yeah.
and how does that happen? How does that work? You were talking about right and left hemisphere. I would like you to explain that to the good folks out there. Y'all, I had it all. I said right brain, left brain. He just so corrected me.
Uh, so the thing is, there's been a movement across the world, not just this country, for a long time now to try to say that there's no difference between men and women. And a lot of people have tried to say that for years now. And then all of a sudden, this last decade, really, people are saying, well, it really doesn't matter what you were born because you can just choose. Biologically, that's really not true. A lot of who we are is baked in at birth or even before birth. They've done a lot of studies over the years on the differences between the male brain and the female brain. They've done a lot of studies on how children interact and what things they gravitate to. And in all of these studies over the years, they've tried to take out any type of environmental influence. And so what they found is that girls will develop verbal skills before boys. That if you take girls and boys 2 to 6 years old who haven't been indoctrinated by their families to choose a boy toy versus a girl toy, anything like that, they'll still gravitate towards what you would consider the toys that boys like for the boys and toys that girls like for the girls. The girls will gravitate towards things that show a caring, like they'll play with babies. They'll take 2 dolls and the dolls will interact with each other, whereas the boys run right to things with wheels and crash them into each other. I mean, this is just, and it doesn't matter the culture. They've done these same type of studies, not just in the American culture, but they've done it in all sorts of countries, and they found that boys tend to be rougher in their play. Boys tend to like, and by the way, this is not every boy, right? This is not every boy and every girl, but overall, the average is boys will gravitate towards more of a, and a lot of people call it violence, but really it's just, more physical type of interaction, whereas the girls will gravitate more towards a verbal type of interaction and a caring and an empathy driven playtime. Again, this is not every single person, right? People are individuals, so there's a lot of variation, but overall, there's a clear difference. And then when they look at the structures of the brain and they look at the physiology of the body, they find differences. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think what's wrong with that is trying to act like God didn't put that in place at the very beginning, right? God created male and female. He didn't create one type of sex. He created 2 separate sexes, and we should expect them to be different. Mm-hmm. Now, the beauty is when they can come together and function as one. Mm. That's what is going to bring glory to the Lord, is when these 2 very separate thinking and very separate acting come together in the bond of marriage, especially, and are able to function as one. That shows the unity of God, right? God in 3 persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and yet one in essence and one in being. We don't understand how that works, but the same, he gave man and woman the ability to do that in marriage, to be one and bring glory to his name. Now, some of the differences, and I've actually gone back and looked at some papers since you asked me about this, but some of the things they come across: women are better at social skills at a younger age. Now, it depends on what kind of jobs you get as adults, because men can learn those same social skills and some thrive in it, but just social interacting, girls, it mature quicker in that area than boys do. Other area is, I told you about the empathy. Oh, girls have a bigger vocabulary at a younger age than boys do. Again, they can catch up by the time they're adults. They don't always, but they can catch up by the time they're adults. And boys and men have more spatial skills. Think like a 3D chessboard. I know of very few women that would ever even come close to even looking at one of those things. And yet it is an attraction for men. They like to think in multiple dimensions on top of each other. They have a better understanding, on average again, of being able to see how parts would fit together. And, you know, our society tries to tell us that women should take on the jobs that have traditionally been male jobs, and men should take on jobs that traditionally should be women's jobs. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we've been trying that for the last 30 years. And have you noticed that we still seem to have careers that are mostly men and careers that are mostly women?
Right.
I mean, I work at William Carey University in the biology department. I train a lot of the pre-nursing classes. I have a lot of pre-nursing students. It's overwhelmingly 95% female. Wow. Now, the males that go into nursing, they love it. They do fantastic. But I mean, most of the faculty is female. Why? We've been trying to say for decades now that we should have an equality at every job. And yet, those caring nursing jobs, women love. My wife's a nurse. Yeah. I look at what she does and I just think, I could never do that. I'm a pastor. You would think I would care. No, I ain't getting involved in I ain't doing that stuff, right? But so the thing is, there is variation, right? But there seem to be some things baked in. And when we don't recognize that in our interpersonal relationships, that's when we get ourselves in all sorts of trouble. Right. And last time we talked, I talked about this, that a lot of times a marriage can be in trouble because the wife just thinks the husband should think exactly like she does. Right. And the husband has no idea how the wife thinks and doesn't even try. And so I think for a relationship to succeed, we always have to be able to understand where the other person's coming from. Right. And we have to decide that they are more important than my perspective, right? That right now my wife's having a hard time. I don't understand why, right? But something is going on there. And I need to just stop being the non-emotional wooden type of guy and stop and say, you know, I may not be able to tap into the emotions she's dealing with right now, but she is dealing with something and it is very real. And I don't need to make her feel like an idiot because she's experiencing those things, because I'm not geared the way she is. And so maybe I would never experience it the way she does, but that doesn't mean that the way she's experiencing things is not valid. Right. At the same time, when she looks at me and goes, why aren't you upset about this? I don't know. I'm not experiencing those emotions. I mean, she needs to not invalidate me. And I think I see this a lot in counseling where a husband and a wife will invalidate the other person's experience because it's not their experience, right? And so oh, he never understands. He always does it wrong. First of all, if you are in a relationship and you want good communication, get rid of the word never, get rid of the word always.
That's right.
You're just going to get yourself in trouble with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? Because if you're like me, I'm the logical thinker. If my wife says, you always do this, well, I didn't do it yesterday. Right. Right. And I can actually go back and start to replay things and say, well, no, I didn't do that last week. So I won the argument. You don't know what you're talking about, right? Well, that doesn't help anybody, does it?
No, not at all.
So get rid of those words and instead approach things. Okay, he doesn't understand. We don't see things the same. That doesn't make what I'm feeling wrong, but it also doesn't make the way he's approaching it wrong.
Right.
What I tell people all the time, as a pastor and just as this logic driven alien person, I always want to look to see how we can fix things. Now, that's a man thing too. Men like to fix stuff, right? It just, most men do. And most women don't want things fixed. They just want to be heard. And that's another place where we get ourselves in trouble because my wife will be upset about something. I'll try to fix it. And she said, and here's one thing we learned 20 years ago. We've been married now for, 32 years.
Better get that right. She's going to see this.
We've been married 32 years. And so about 20 years ago, it took us a good decade at least to get this figured out. She finally got it across to me. I don't want you to fix this. I just need you to listen to me.
Right.
And that was for me, that was huge. That was huge because I didn't know I was trying to fix it every time.
Right.
It's just my default.
You just said it. It's by default. It's
yeah.
And that brings me to another one of these questions, which you basically answered. It came in and said, how do I effectively communicate my needs and feelings without causing tension and misunderstanding?
So I think the best way to approach that, first of all, you don't do it in anger.
Right.
Most of the times we try to talk about these things is in the middle of an argument. That's the worst time to try to talk about it because you're already defensive. Your spouse is already defensive. You're both ready to tear the other person's head off. That's really not a good time to work out, hey, I need to approach you this way or that way. And so you got to try to find a time that's calm between you and say, hey, look, can we talk about something and not get upset about it? And I'm going to try really hard to not get upset because I know I cause a lot of the problems. You have to own it. Yeah. You have to own it. When you come to somebody, and it doesn't really matter what kind of relationship it is, even if it's a child and an adult, you have to own the fact that you are part of the problem. Yeah. Yeah. I talk to a lot of people who, when we're doing premarital counseling and they've been married previously, I say to them, so what is going to be different this time? And then a lot of times they'll just blame the whole divorce on the other person. Right. Well, this person's not like that person. I say, yeah, but you are. You're the same. And until you get to the point where you recognize what you did to make it go off the rails, you're going to just repeat that. And you think this new person is going to somehow rise above it, but they're not. You're going to wind up in the same trap. That's right. So we have to recognize, so whenever we approach somebody and there's something that needs to change, and I mean, we do terrible things to each other all the time, right? Every person does not interact with people the way they should all the time. So we have to own up to that, and we have to come to the person, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a parent-child relationship. If you want them to change, you have to take responsibility for what you do to push their buttons, let's say. Okay? So I come to my wife sometimes and say, you know what, babe? I know that I get defensive about this area, and I really hope that you'll hear me now. But I really feel that we would get a little better, and I'll work on not being defensive. I'll work on not, making assumptions and things like that. But would you maybe change the way you ask the question? Because a lot of times when you ask me a question, it sounds like you're condemning me instead of really, well, no, I'm not trying to condemn you. I know, I understand that now. But in the heat of the moment, it sure does sound like it.
Yeah.
Like your body language and the tone of your voice, I think you're attacking me. And I've thought about it and I've realized you're not, but I don't know that you realize the way that you're approaching it. Right now, she may not change, right? She may just think about it and go, that's ridiculous. Or she might just change. And then we'll be able to work through that. And then whatever I'm doing that triggers that accusatory approach might change. I tell people all the time, you have a lot more power in your relationship than you realize. You want that person to change. You're just sitting there praying, Lord, Lord, please change them. Please change them. But you don't understand that you have the key to getting them to change. You need to change your approach. You need to change the way you see them. You need to change. You just need to love them more than you love yourself.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Right. So the truth of the matter is we're not the same.
Right.
And I mean, you could go through, I could give you a bunch of, I got papers with me just in case, right?
Well, that's good stuff. So okay, here's one. There's so many of them that came in. So
Okay.
let me see this one here. Dr. Butler answered that one. Why don't I have any friends? That's one. And the
Well,
second,
you need to take showers once in a while.
well, whoever wrote that, y'all got the answer.
I'm sorry.
I'm just playing. Okay.
Just playing.
Why don't I have any friends? And the other one is, how do you, what is this? In marriage, is it marriage 50-50 or 100-100?
Okay, let's take the first one. I know some folks that would be able to say that question, why don't I have any friends? And they don't realize how abrasive they are towards the people that try to make friends with them. Sometimes I'll sit down and say, well, this person over there, they approached you and they were trying to be, oh, I can't stand that person. Like, okay. Well, what about so-and-so over there? You seem to like them. They had, well, that just didn't, they did this to me or they did that to me. And there's not an easy, gentle way to say this, but most of the time as a pastor for now 23 years, I've seen most of the time when people don't have any friends, they push everybody away and don't know it. They don't see it. And the biggest problem is they're focused so much on themselves that I said just a few minutes ago, in order for a relationship to work, you have to be able to try to understand where the other person's coming from, try to sit in their shoes. And if you don't have friendships that are close, it could be that everything is focused on you in that friendship and they just can't do it. It wears them out.
It kind of reminds me when you're talking that Bible scripture that says a man that hath friends must show himself friendly. Which is what you're saying. They don't have friends, but you're not being friendly.
You're not being friendly. You really, and you have to realize too that friendship means you might get hurt.
That's right. Vulnerability.
You have to be vulnerable, and there's a lot of people who have been hurt so much in their past that they don't know how to just one more time put themselves out there because they'll get too hurt. But no risk, no reward, as they say. You have to risk that, and you have to be a friend, really.
Yes.
To expect people to be friends with you. Okay, so that was the first. What was the second?
Okay, the second one was, is marriage 50-50, 100-100?
I would say marriage is all of you and all of your spouse.
100.
Yeah, I mean, however you want to quantify that, it's kind of a weird thing to me, 50-50, because like, do you really know what 100 looks like? I don't know what 100 looks like.
I imagine this was a female because of the way she wrote it. It was written.
Okay. Okay.
I, I would think it was more to it, but then I just took that right out of it. It was do you feel that when you get married, you handle half of it, I handle half of it, or
Oh, heck no.
and supposed to handle it, take care of you, whatever. That I got that out of whoever wrote it.
So, so when I go through the scripture with a couple, either in couples counseling or premarital counseling, one of the things we do, we go through Ephesians 5. And in Ephesians 5, the Apostle Paul tells us to submit to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Submit to one another. And that's how it starts. So husbands and wives, he's about to talk about husbands and wives, but he starts off by saying, submit to one another.
Right.
And then he says, wives, submit to your husbands as unto Christ. And then he says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. He gave himself up for the church. And so I talk to couples and I say, first of all, when it says wives submit to your husband, he's already said we're supposed to submit to each other. So a lot of people will take that verse and go, oh, the Christians in the Bible, they're misogynistic. They hate women and they want them to submit. And I don't know, we're in the same era. You remember All in the Family with Archie Bunker, and he's just like, they say, oh, they just want the husband to rule things like Archie Bunker ruled his family and his wife, and Edith would just bring him a beer scared to death.
Right.
Right. That's not what Christ focused submission is. Okay. And so I tell them it's already said wives and husbands submit to one another, submit to each other. So then wives, submit to your husbands as unto the Lord, and husbands, love your wives. And I asked the couple, why do you think it's written this way? What is it about men and women that the Apostle Paul had to tell the wife to submit again, even though he's already told them both to submit to each other? Why would he point that out again for the wife and then not say it to the husband again, and instead say, husbands, you got to love your wife? Mm-hmm. And I say, I don't know what you think. Okay. I've got my own thoughts, and my own thoughts from I was in science for many years, and I've been a professor for now the last 20 some odd years. But I was in research. I've worked lots of different jobs over the years to get myself through college, things like that. And what I saw, and some of the women watching this might get really ticked off right now and turn it off. Please don't. What I've seen over the years is that men really don't have a problem with authority. Some do, okay, but most men, and you see this in the military, men, they gravitate, they get into the military, they got a sergeant screaming at them, okay, whatever, right? And they just do it. But I have met very few women who don't bristle when an authority is over them. And I mean, I've worked for plenty of bosses that were women, plenty of bosses that were men. I could care less. Whatever. They're my boss. Mm-hmm. But I've seen so many women that it just rubs them raw that they have somebody telling them what to do. And they'll start to do the head thing and don't you tell me what to do. And I don't see men doing that. I just see, men will complain about their boss, but they're like, it's the boss, whatever. If I don't like it, I'll go get another job. Mm-hmm. But I don't see this inner turmoil like, oh, who do they think they are? Well, they're your boss. Right? Okay, so God set up the family to say the husband, the wife are co-equal in this, but the husband is responsible to God for this family. Mm-hmm. The wife then is responsible to the husband. She's responsible to God as well, but through the husband's head, leadership. So husbands, you're already under this authority. You better have this figured out already. Mm-hmm. You need to love your wife. Now, if I love my wife, then I can't rule over her as an authority figure. Even though God has given me the authority, I don't use that authority to damage her. I submit to her, first of all, but I do it out of love. Christ, the Last Supper, disciples come in, they're all getting prepared for the Passover feast. What's he do? He gets on his hands and knees, he pulls out the water, and he pulls out the towel, and he washes their feet. Okay, this is what he considers authority. Jesus Christ, our authority at the Last Supper, he tells them, this is my body, this is my blood. He's giving them instructions because he is their Lord.
Right.
But he washed their feet. That's the lordship of Christ over us, serving out of love, and yet he is the authority. Well, the husband is supposed to serve his wife in the same way, out of love. So when we say, is it 50-50, is 100-100, that doesn't even apply.
Right.
Because it is, the husband is supposed to be so sacrificial,
yes,
in his love, that his wife comes first in his life. The Lord comes first, but his wife, in his view of everything, is more important than himself and its family. The husband is the one that sacrifices. The husband is the one that I'm going to do whatever it takes for this family to thrive. Why? Because I have to answer to God for this family. Okay, the wife doesn't have to answer to God directly for the family. The husband does. And this is where so many get it all messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get it twisted because we've got a whole multi-generation of men who don't realize they're responsible for that family in God's sight.
Right.
And we've got a whole multi-generation of women who say, I would never submit to some man. And wait, it's not a, oh, you can get by without this. Am I back yet?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Right. So I would not say 50-50. I would not say 100-100. I would say everything you have, which may be more than 100%, depending on how you score it, right? Yeah. But for this thing to work, to bring glory to God, you're both going to sacrifice, but it's going to be in different ways.
Yes.
Does that work?
That works. Works.
Okay.
I hope spotted lady or man, whoever wrote it. Yeah. It's a sacrificial thing, and we all got to be responsible. Submit yourself one to another. So y'all, I hope you got it. I hope you got it. And we'll be back next week to answer some more questions. With that said, this is DTM Real Talk, and we're just doing what? Keeping it real. Real.
Keeping it real.
Next week. Thanks for watching DTM Real Talk. Be sure to join us for more conversation. And oh yeah, don't forget to hit that like button, share, and subscribe while you're there.